Hey, it's Mazzy, and I'm going to talk to you about American Beauty by the Grateful Dead. Now, I would argue, and I'm not even arguing, I'm stating it as a factual statement from my point of view, though, so it is a objective statement, if that makes any sense, that American Beauty is the best studio Grateful Dead record ever. I've been thinking about this a lot. Now, I'm going to set the story, set the tone of what this is about. This is about the new Rhino Records, Rhino Hi-Fi edition, all analog cut by Kevin Gray that was just released. I bought this copy, and this is one of my all-time favorite albums. And again, from 1970, the best Grateful Dead studio album. Now, you could objectively say that a close second is this one. This was released in July of 1970, and this was released in November of 1970. Two great country rock folk-based recordings of the Grateful Dead. Very different from what they've been doing, and brilliant records. You know, in '68 we get Sweetheart of the Rodeo, where the Byrds go into a country direction. We get Beau Brummell's Bradley's Barn, and the folk rock scene was really happening from the late 60s into this. And obviously the DNA of the Grateful Dead, especially Jerry Garcia out of Palo Alto and his guitar and banjo playing and teaching, is heavily all over these two records. And just what a wonderful sound. And I would also argue that whatever copy you own, whatever copy you get of this, it's gonna sound really good. This is, to me, the best recorded, the best sounding Grateful Dead record. I'm always talking about the music first, yes, but when you get a chance of a record that sounds just so good, like this record, you're in for real pleasure in your stereo. Now, I bought this as it came out. Both these records I bought within a week or so after they came out, and both recorded in San Francisco. This one was recorded at Wally Heider Studios, and what a fruitful time it was, a fruitful time at Wally Heider's in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco on Hyde Street. This period, there was a really collective of the San Francisco and Marin-based musicians of the day. Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead, Nicky Hopkins was around with all these artists. Crosby, Nash, and Young, individually, collectively, were hanging around, especially David Crosby, and also Neil Young as well. And then other artists dropping in and working with these artists. As they were working on this record, I think David Crosby, they just started recording his first solo album, If I Can Only Remember My Name. And the sound of both these records, if you've heard that record, or if you haven't heard that record, check it out. It's also a wonderful sounding record. This has a wonderful, elaborate, I think this is probably amongst their best covers by Anton Kelly, Kelly Mouse Studios. Obviously, did a lot of the psychedelic Avalon and Fillmore posters of the day, but what a great sounding record this is. I am going to do some comparisons, a bit of a shootout here. I don't do a lot of shootouts. I always say that when I do these because they're few and far between, but they are objective. It's based on my taste, my room. I tend to be in a somewhat of a live room, but it's the room I really prefer to listen to music in, and it just works really well for me. In terms of my system, those of you who don't know, just to give you, I have B&W 702 S2s. Again, a little bright room, but speakers that I've had for, I'd say, 4 years now. They're well broken in. I have a Hagel H390 receiver, has a lot of power and really nicely and efficiently pushes these speakers, and it really opens them up, so I get a lot of mid-range and bottom. I have a Riga P8 turntable with a cartridge that I'm just finishing breaking out. I think I'm close to 75 hours now of a Hanna Unagi Blue MC cart through an Riga Aria stage. So that gives you an idea. Plus I have an Oppo 205 CD Blu-ray player, and I did include a CD version with my comparison here. Now, The versions I have, an original artisan pressed OG Greenie Warner Brothers label, either the first or second printing, but the green label, great Warner Brothers. Anytime you get a chance to pick up green labels, that's what you want, is the green label. I have two Chris Bellman cuts. I have this cut, which is from the 2010 Warner Brothers Rhino box that came out of their early Warner Brothers records, their early Warner Brothers studio records into the 1960s into 1970. I have the Vinyl Me Please box. This was the first press. This is going to be pressed again with this beautiful interior, Grateful Dead interior. This was also a Chris Bellman cut. Now, someone in the comments, please tell me. I don't know if this is a separate cut by Chris Bellman. So this came out about, what, 3 years ago, I think? 3 to 4 years ago, tops. It's sold out, but they will be repressing it later this year. But really beautiful version of this. This particular one is on red vinyl. I couldn't care less. Either way, if the vinyl's good, if the mastering color or not, black is a color. So there you go. And of course, the new Rhino High Fidelity cut by Kevin Gray. I also did include from this box set one CD version, just to kind of get a feel for it. But I want to go through these and just give you the overall sense. This record came out of a time where the influences of the Grateful Dead with country and folk music were really strong. I saw the Dead do an acoustic set earlier that year in 1970 at the Family Dog on the Great Highway. It wasn't billed as a Grateful Dead concert. It was various members of Mickey Hart and Bob Weir, and it essentially became a Dead show and a Dead concert. And there is a Record Store Day, I believe, record of that beautiful version of that live show. Grateful Dead are definitely known for their live shows. You know, I would say after these, I like the first album best. Now, people go through their psychedelic period of I always say it wrong, so Axomoxa, a palindrome. Anthem of the Sun, of course, are more psychedelic, surreal. I love that stuff. But when it comes together collectively, these are the albums to me that fit songwriting, harmonies, musicianship, recording. Everything came together on these two records equally in a way. I still give this the edge over Working Man's Dead, but it could be either way. It could have been the perfect double album. And then you get into the Arista years, of course, or their solo, before the Arista years, obviously, when they started their own label with Wake of the Flood. That period, I think those are strong records, but I think there's always a track or two that just doesn't quite gel, just in that period. Even when you get onto Arista and Terrapin Station, and of course, over and over, I think there's things that work brilliantly and some that don't. What's great about these two albums, they have a feel that works together collectively, that works together just even with all the different writers. Now, the difference between Working Man's Dead and here is this is primarily Hunter and Garcia written songs for the most part, and produced by Bob Matthews and Betty Cantor, their longtime engineer. This was different because a lot of the Dead family were on the road during this period without the Dead, and they worked with a new crew at Wally Heider Studios, but it worked so well. The songs were well rehearsed. Jerry Garcia, they were influenced by Crosby, Stills, Nash at this point, the harmonies. That had just come out. Jerry Garcia had played on Deja Vu, playing pedal steel guitar on Teach Your Children. So I think there's that cross-pollination that was happening. If you follow what was going on at Wally Heider with the Jefferson Airplane and the Paul Kantner, Gray Slick records, as well as David Crosby and Neil Young coming in and out, and Graham Nash, and all of them really hang out in a way as a extended collective, if you will. Also on this record, what was wonderful is David Grissman shows up, and he's an old-time friend of Jerry Garcia. He moves back to the Bay Area, or moves to the Bay Area. Great mandolin player. I would see them many times throughout the 70s on various collaborations. Olden and the Way, they worked together, and just wonderful records where they collaborated. A great mandolin. He plays on two cuts on here. I think it's on Ripple or Friend of the Devil, there's double track mandolin, and it's a stunning sound. And also Howard Wales, who I saw several times, who was touring or playing around the Bay Area with Jerry Garcia playing the organ. It's really wonderful. And of course, members also of the New Riders of the Purple Sage, and another band I saw with Jerry Garcia sitting in on the pedal steel. His pedal steel was really shining around 1969, 1970, around this period. But let's get to the music. That's what you want. There's always someone's going to say, come on, this guy doesn't get to the music in the review. That's the bottom line. But I want to do a little setup there. So, all in all, let me give you the punchline here. The OG Greenie is my favorite. It is just a perfect balance. It's a wonderful recording. Again, being a record that I've had since 1970, so, almost 54 years old, there is some surface noise. But if you have a green copy, you almost don't need another copy. It is so good, so well recorded, so well balanced. It's a stunningly beautiful record. I think second, I'm giving it to the Rhino Hi-Fi. It has all the things this has, the original, maybe a little more open, but this again is probably a warmer sounding record. This might have a slight openness, brightness to it, but it's not at all an overly bright record. I think I hear in the percussion, I like the percussion on here, or at least it's more apparent, and the brushes of Bill Kreutzmann is really apparent on some of the songs on here. Again, it's a more of acoustic thing, obviously electric guitars, acoustic guitars, great songs on here, like opening up with a Phil Lesh song, Boxer Rain. His bass is incredible on this album. It's not pushed, it's not, boosted or goosed on this. I will say I do not have a copy of the MoFi record, either the original one that came out, I think, on MoFi in the 70s, or in the last few years, there's been a double 45 version. Now, I haven't heard those. I understand they're all analog. I understand, my guess is that the double 45 would have an edge because of the speed. Now, I'm not usually a fan of double 45 records. I'd be curious to get that. I decided to pass on it because this is one of those records to me organically. I like that it's 33, that I play it through one side, flip it another side. I don't need it split up 4 times. Now, if you're wanting to show off your stereo and wanting that thing, my guess is there might be an edge there. I don't know if it would better this or this. I don't know. That's for someone else to showcase and tell you. But so that is not included here. Again, the percussion on the Rhino Hi-Fi is just incredible. The bass is there, it's not goosed, and it's very, very close. I'd say the Rhino Hi-Fi is the closest out of all these to my original. So again, if you don't have an original, if you don't want to, hunt and peck for a quiet sounding Greenie, I would say go to this. I have heard a later 70s, early 70s Warner Brothers Palm Tree, and those sound really good too. I don't think there is ever been a bad version of this. Of course, I haven't heard every version, but any version I had, if you're satisfied, that's all that matters. If you like it and it sounds good on your rig to your ears, that's all you need. The songs are amazing. Friend of the Devil, one of the great, great songs, co-written by Dawson from New Riders of the Purple Sage, Hunter and Garcia. Great, great acoustic sounds. One of my great favorite covers of that, there's a version on a Dead Comp that Lyle Lovett does, and it's just a stunning version. Of course, a lot of the songs on here would become staples on their live shows after this. Friend of the Devil, of course, Sugar Magnolia, the Bob Weir Hunter song, Candyman Operator, of course, that's the Pigpen song, and this would be the last studio album Pigpen played on. And then, of course, Ripple. Again, the guitar, the acoustic guitar sounds on this are so well recorded. This record, it sounds like it was recorded like a jazz album. Very simple. I think it's 16 track, but the harmony vocals, some of the double tracking the vocals are just so beautiful. And that double tracking of the mandolin is just, and not playing different parts. by David Grisman, repeating himself. It's almost like when Lennon used to use ADR, the automatic double tracking for his vocal work, because he was insecure about his vocals. And that's a little bit like that. Again, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a recording producer, but from my novice ears and my little knowledge of that, that would be my take and my impression. But very well rehearsed, and their harmonies are beautiful. They played live in a circle while they're recording this. The liner notes on the Rhino Hi-Fi, really give you a good impression of how this record was recorded at Wally Heider at the time. And it gives you just a really good overview and understanding of it, how this record was made. Of course, there's the box of master tape, the lacquer cut at Artisan, there, the original, and of course this classic picture of the Grateful Dead in Marin County. The two Chris Bellmans, I think these two Chris Bellmans are the same cut, but I don't know. I believe they're all analog. The Vinyl Me Please from the blue box that came out just a couple years ago, 4 years ago. And of course, the 2010 from the orange Rhino box that has the studio Grateful Dead records. This is a lovely copy too. These are very similar. I did find, which really surprised me this time, and I don't remember if I just didn't pay attention or really didn't listen to this through when I first got it. I found on the Chris Bellman, the Vinyl Me Please version, some sibilance where the S's were like that, which bothered me a little bit, and it seemed a little more congested, mostly on side one, but a little bit on side two over this version. The gardener has arrived, if you can hear that. We got some buzzing, but we have some sibilance on this. Now, these seem very close. I do prefer, from this test, from this play period, the 2010 version over the VMP, but again, not by much. And the bottom line on all these kind of shootouts, if you like what you have, and if you don't know what you don't have, you're not going to be disappointed with any of these versions. This sounds really good too. Now, I thought this was incredible, this CD. Now, there's been so many CD, anniversary editions, DVD A's, surround version, Atmos versions. I don't have any of those. I haven't heard any of these. But if you're a CD person, I assume every version of this would sound good. It was crystal clear, obviously, being a compact disc. But I did miss, in fact, good bass on here too. I did miss, there was a certain sound, live sound I missed being a CD, where it's not what you hear, it's what you don't hear. And like room noise, like white noise. Not that there's noise on any of these records, but there's something about, and this is subjective and probably system dependent, room dependent. There's something you miss on a CD compared to a vinyl, at least in my system. But when I'm running around the house doing stuff, I pop on a CD and I enjoy it immensely. So it's not taking away from the quality or the sound of this Rhino version of the CD. I don't have an original CD release from Warner Brothers, but I have this box set, the Golden Road 65 to 73. Now I got to talk about the cover art and the cover printing on these records. This is my favorite album cover of any Grateful Dead record. Now, they've made a lot of great covers, especially their Warner Brothers years. I do like Wake of the Flood and the first couple of records on Grateful Dead records as well. That's stunningly beautiful artwork. Once they got to Arista, to me, it was hit and miss. Go to Heaven, really? Even the illustration for Shakedown Street, not one of my favorites. Even Terrapin Station, whatever. But I love this cover. I mean, it emulates what was happening with the Avalon and Fillmore posters. Mouse Studios with Anton Kelly and the poster artist just really fit in. There was a cross-pollination of the poster art from the 60s with the Grateful Dead early on. Of course, Skull and Roses became the infamous thing. The roses and the skull seems to be almost on every album until that little bear came along on Bear's Choice. But there's a certain organic and richness and woodiness and very kind of San Francisco versus Marin County. If you know, north of the Golden Gate Bridge, what that feels like, what the what the location feels like. This is what this record is about, for me at least. They were living up north out of the hate of this period, coming into San Francisco. You know, I was seeing them around this time. I saw the Dead from 68 through the late 70s, and then maybe 3 times in the 80s. And after 89, I never saw them again. I saw them almost every series of shows they did at Winterland. I saw them about 30 times, which that means I'm not considered a Deadhead because I've only seen them about 30 times. But it was, to me, the brilliant period of the Grateful Dead for me personally. And this period when they were doing songs from these albums. Of course, it goes into Ripple, Broken Down Palace, Till the Morning Comes. Attics of My Life is that pure 3-part harmony, like the Beatles, because like Crosby, Stills and Nash, just one of the most beautiful pieces of music with the bass of Phil Lesh on that, closing out with Truckin', arguably their most famous song, in a way to cliche. And this album actually did pretty well. Not a huge hit, but over the years, this album has done extremely well. But going back to the cover art, the warmness here, if you look at this, and maybe it's not as easy to see, I'd say it's 1 or 2 stops hot. Now, I'm using the term of photography where you open up the exposure to open up the image. It's a little bright compared to this. If you can see them back to back, it's a little bright and slightly soft. I don't know if they got this from a scan or what. It's not as succinct and perfect as the original. A little bit, slightly, ever so slightly washed out. Again, if you're not comparing, you probably wouldn't notice. I would say the Vinyl Me Please version is better. It's got a matte finish. As much as I like this whole thing with Tone Poets and Rhinos with the glossy finish, for my personal take, I prefer this matte, especially on this sort of cover. And this one's a little warmer compared to the original. Again, it's a little brighter, depending on light sources. Not getting into whole photography right now. But it's really beautifully done. All said and done, the recent Vinyl Me Please box set, the cover art is my favorite. There's the back art. And again, maybe a little congested in the new Rhino Hi-Fi, just slightly. One more little nitpick I'll say in closing here is I don't know what Rhino is doing on these Hi-Fi, but as you can see, they're slightly wider. So they're not perfectly square. And I know some people get pissed off because they don't fit in normal slight inner sleeves, or they're a very tight fit. I actually have the first Cars album, which actually fit in a sleeve. I don't know how it did, but it did. I don't have a lot of these. I have the Van Morrison record, the Rhino Hi-Fi, which is incredible. I love that. I have the Television album that I love, and I have this one. I do not have Candy O. I do not have Herbie Hancock. I do not have the Doobie Brothers. And this is a record that I paid for with my own little bank account, and I love it. So again, the bottom line is the first would be an OG Greenie. I think the Palm Tree label is really good too, but I didn't compare those. I don't have one here right now. And then as a close second would be the Rhino High Fidelity. In fact, if you don't have that album at all, this would be the one to get at $39, which is a little more. I think there are various versions out there. Chris Bellman cuts you can get probably for 25 to 30. I would add the extra 10 to 15 bucks, I think, and get the Rhino Hi-Fi. I think right now it's an edition of 5,000. It's available, so but don't sleep on it. I don't know if my copy with the sibilants from the Vinyl Me Please is an aberration or not. But again, aside from that, aside from the few little sections of that, it's an excellent sounding record. All of these are really good sounding now, which is great. It's great when there's not a huge difference. Again, and the difference between the OG Green and the Rhino High Fidelity and the Chris Bellmans is not day and night. If I didn't have them, I probably wouldn't know what I was missing. But that's it. That is my take on the Rhino High Fidelity Grateful Dead, 1970. Perfect record of American Beauty. Thanks for watching. There's nothing like a Grateful Dead concert and these two studio albums. Mazzy loves you.